good afternoon. I'm Dr. Badal, and I'll be hosting this afternoon event hosted by the Western Campus, the University of the West Indies, in commemoration of the UN World Day, for Safety and Health. And I'm sure that you're eager to hear our speakers start. So I'm not going to hold you any longer. And who best to start us off than our director for the Western Campus?
Thank you, Dr. Badal. On behalf of the UWI Mona Western Jamaica Campus, I take distinct pleasure in welcoming you all to this seminar being held as part of our campus recognizing World Day for Safety and Health at Work 2021. You know, one of the expressions that has become a part of our regular narrative, especially over the last year, is dancing through the rain. The COVID-19 pandemic has really made this phrase not just a demonstration of our resilience, but an acknowledgement of how important it is to build systems and models for doing just that. Dancing against the storms of workplace tension and of course, increased depression. Dancing over the hurdles of anxieties about job security and the temptations of controlling power in a time that requires us to be even more communicative, more engaging, and more understanding. The goal for us is always about finding that ray of sunshine to ensure workplace safety, to support workforce stability, to be creative in balancing our life and work, as Dr. Badal mentioned, and of course, maintaining good health overall. That is why we at the UWI Mona Western Jamaica Campus embrace, for example, the idea of a health and wellness day off even before the pandemic. That is why we are encouraged by the theme for the 2021 World Day for Safety and Health at Work. Anticipate, prepare, and respond to crises. Invest now in resilient occupational safety and health systems. We believe that the physical and mental well-being of the worker are major considerations in building resilient occupational health and safety systems. And this seminar is designed to make that belief clear. So as we consider occupational health and safety systems and standards, it is a deliberate choice on our part to not only underscore the psychosocial and physical health risks associated with these challenging times, but also to highlight the urgent need for increased focus on occupational health services within our work environment. So I want to thank you all for joining the dialogue, and we really hope it will be of tremendous value to you.
Our next presenter hails from Western Jamaica. Similarly, she's a psychotherapist and an independent consultant working in the field of public health for over 15 years, with aspects of our work on HIV prevention, behavior change, and adolescent sexual health. She has been instrumental in aspects of policy analyses, monitoring and evaluation, program development and implementation, and qualitative health research. She has worked with several international donor agencies providing technical assistance in Jamaica, as well as countries in the wider Caribbean, South America, and Central America. She is a member, an active member of the World Health Organization HIV Testing Services Guidelines Development Group since 2015. She's a graduate of the Middlesex University in England and holds a doctorate degree in psychotherapy. And she works at our campus here in Western Jamaica, as well as sees patients or clients in private practice in Montego Bay. She's a member of the Jamaica Psychological Association and, equally important, of the American Counseling Association. Help me welcome our colleague and friend, Dr. Jennifer Stuart-Dixon, as she speaks to us now on coping with anxiety in unprecedented times. Help me welcome her.
Thank you, Dr. Badal. It's such a pleasure to be here today. So I'm here today to speak with you about coping with anxiety in unprecedented times. And we certainly are in unprecedented times. Now, we have been in this pandemic for over a year. And, you know, the picture on the screen is a maze because as I speak about anxiety, I'm beginning to feel that a lot of us are beginning to feel like we are in a maze. And as we talk about anxiety today, I think one of the best ways to begin to get ourselves out of this maze is first to begin to understand what is anxiety, what triggers us, and then what are the things that we can begin to put in place to reduce our anxiety and feel more balanced. And how can we allow a work-life balance to be one of the ways in which we address our anxiety. So here we go. Right, so if we're looking at anxiety, you know, it is a feeling of unease, of worry, of fear. And as you can see in that diagram, just begin to identify the symptoms that you experience when you begin to feel anxious. Are you feeling on edge? Do you have a dry mouth? Are you irritable? Are you having frequent headaches? Are your muscles aching? So just take a look at this slide and begin to identify how you present or how anxiety presents for you. Because it is important for us to be able to identify what is happening to our bodies and therefore be able to identify, oh yes, I'm beginning to feel anxious. And then we can determine what steps we need to take to address this anxiety. So I hope you all have your pens out with a little notepad and you can just begin to take some little brief notes about which of these symptoms apply directly to you. Now, the next thing that I want to say is, once you have identified those symptoms, knowing your triggers and your individual response to anxiety is very important. And I like to look at the picture at the top of the slide where that little lady is looking so overwhelmed. And I'm sure there's several people out there who can identify with that feeling of being overwhelmed. Now, what is it that makes you overwhelmed? What is it that contributes to that anxiety for you? Is it that there are issues with job security? Is it that it's report writing time? Is it appraisal time? Is it that you need to present in front of a large group of persons? What are your individual triggers? Begin to identify what they are and how do you respond to that? Do you begin to doubt yourself and begin to have thoughts that say, I can't cope, and question what will people think of you? Do you feel that you need to escape? Is it that you begin to feel nervous and anxious and irritable and we're snapping and getting into arguments with the people around us who we love and who support us? Are we having dizziness? Are we having some tunnel vision? What is happening to you? And it's important for you to understand what is happening to you as we begin to understand anxiety and as we begin to try and cope with it in our day-to-day lives. Now, as I said before, finding balance is a way through which we can deal with our anxiety. And, you know, Ms. Rose is going to speak a little later on about finding that balance between work and our personal lives. And how do we ensure that we keep this balance? I like how those rocks are aligned because it's balanced, it's stable. And that is what we want to do, not just through this pandemic, but throughout the course of our lives. And I want to tell you something, the pandemic may pass on. We may be able to one day walk around without masks and be able to go back to some kind of normalcy. But in regards to anxiety, we are always going to have some aspect of our life that is creating an anxiety for us, whether it be our work, whether it be our children, whether it be our health. Different things bring up anxiety for you. So this is such a great opportunity to learn what things that you can incorporate into your life to begin to address anxiety. Right, so I want to introduce this concept to you of pair. And when I speak of pair, it means to reduce something in size, in extent, or the quantity in a number of small successive stages. And so what is it in your life that you need to pare down? What is it in your life that we need to begin taking away? And what small steps, what small successive steps can we begin to take to begin to reduce the amount of balls we have juggling in the air and create for ourselves more balance? So the pair here represents poetry and prayer, A for activity, R for routines, and E for exercises. And now exercises have been something we've been talking about consistently because both of our other speakers, Dr. Stair and our other two speakers, mentioned exercise. And so it is a consistent theme in managing and coping and balance. So let's talk a little bit about poetry and prayer. Now, the prayer that I chose to share with you, if you are a praying person, and as a Caribbean people, we are very spiritual. And this particular prayer is one that I know that a lot of us are very familiar with. But let me just ask, how many people know beyond the first paragraph? So the prayer says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, most of us put a full stop here, but this prayer continues to talk about living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. And that for me speaks to issues of control. Trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in my life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. Now, just take that in a little, because sometimes prayer can be very useful in how we deal with the stressors that life brings and the conflicts and the drama of our day-to-day life. But let's zero in on enjoying one moment at a time. That is slowing down, right? That is small, succinct steps. And it's also about accepting the hardship as a pathway to peace, and sometimes accepting hardships as a means through which we grow, right? Trusting that you will make all things right, right? So that's one of my P's. My other P is a poem that I want to share with you. Now, lately, I have been finding poetry more and more useful in my work. And the last presentation that I shared with WJC, we did a poem, and here is another one. But as we do this poem, I want you to close your eyes, listen to the words, and almost take yourself to this place. And it says, are you ready? It says, leave your worries by the shoreline and run your bare feet through the sand. Let the water be a soft bed when you cannot bear to stand. Make friends with flying seagulls and hold the sun up to your palm before you duck beneath the water where the world is mute and calm. Tell the fish all of your problems as they all come swimming past. When your lungs are close to bursting, swim above the waves and gasp. Let the water hold your sadness and wash it out to sea. So like a message in a bottle, all your worries are set free. And the sea might make you feel alone, but the world has troubles too. For how else do you suppose that the ocean got so blue? I really like that one. It also can be used as somewhat of a guided imagery, which is one of the ways that we work with persons when we are doing relaxation techniques. So poetry can take you places. It can take you to the mountains. It can speak to your pain or your anxiety. So look at poetry. Look at deal with anxiety in your life. So the next up here was, did I miss? No, was activities, yes. And one of the things that we really have to monitor as we try to gain a grip of anxiety is to monitor our thoughts. We have to be careful about how we generalize when we see a pattern based upon a single event. And we are usually keyed into these type of thought patterns when we start to say things like, every single time it rains, I get soaking wet and my house floods out. Does it happen every single time? When we begin to say things all the time, nothing ever goes right for me, we have to begin to watch those types of thoughts. They're self-defeating. They're leading us to a pattern of not feeling very good about ourselves. And it's going to increase our anxiety. I'm never good at presentations. Every time I get in front of people, I make a mistake. When we have those kinds of thoughts, of course, you are going to be feeling anxious. Another thought that we need to be very careful of is when we are trying to do emotional reasoning. We have to be careful that not because we feel a certain way that we think that it must be true. It doesn't have to be true. I might feel that I'm not very good at presenting in public. I might feel that I'm not very good interacting with students. I might feel that I'm not very good at my job, and therefore with the cuts that's coming up, I'm going to be one of the first persons to go. That might not be true. One of the things that I like to suggest for that is every now and then, do some introspection, do some assessments. There have been times in my life when I've called friends and I've said, can you rank me on X, Y, and Z? Can you tell me what you think about my interpersonal skills? Can you tell me what you think about my presentation skills? The last time I wrote a report or I presented some statistics, how was that? And then sometimes getting the opinion of others can help us with this emotional reasoning. It can be the other side that says, no, you really are quite good at that. Or it could be, this is an area that you may need to sharpen, but at least it's more realistic and it's not based solely on the way that you are feeling in the moment about any one particular thing. Okay, so moving on from the A, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to still stick with the A, and I'm going to talk about some breathing exercises. Now, we do a lot of breathing exercises in psychotherapy and in psychology, helping people to just relax, to inhale with deep breaths in through the nose, pursing your lips and breathing out slowly. And sometimes just taking breaths can go a long way in releasing and letting people feel more relaxed and coping with anxiety in the moment, particularly if you find yourself having panic attacks. And so you're just about to engage in a dialogue with some students or some colleagues, and all of a sudden you begin to feel those symptoms that was presented on the first slide. You know, you're sweating or your heart starts racing and you begin to feel worried and fearful. Breathe, just breathe. Another activity that I like to rely on is this activity, which is a grounding technique. And it really is a grounding, and a grounding is to bring your focus and your attention to one place, because anxiety has the potential to have our thoughts taken off in all directions, just like that maze at the beginning of that slide, you remember? Right, and so to ground ourselves, to find ourselves within that moment. And this activity is very useful in helping you do that. So the activity is about focusing your attention on 5 things that you can see around you. And say, what are 5 things that I can see around you? Let's just do it. 5 things that you can see. You can see your desk, you can see the screen, you maybe can see your phone, right? 5 things that you can see around you. Then you move on to 4 things that you can feel. What can you feel? I can feel my dress against my skin. I can feel the fan. I can feel it's a little windy. I can feel the breeze outside. What can you feel? 3 things that you can hear. You can hear my voice. Can you hear some horns from down the road? Can you hear some birds? What are 3 things that you can hear? And then 2 things that you can smell. Maybe someone's cooking nearby. Maybe you were sucking on a mint and you can still smell that. And then the final thing is one thing that you can taste. And maybe that might be you can taste the coffee that you just had and what you were sipping on, or the lemonade that you've been drinking. So I find this grounding technique is very useful. What I like about this technique is you can go online and just do a search for grounding technique, and you can walk with this little slide in your phone. So whenever you feel that you need it, you can just pull it up and you can just do that activity in the privacy of your space and begin to feel more relaxed and less anxious. So if we go to our E, exercise, and I think every other presenter today has mentioned the importance of exercise, from boosting your immune system to dealing with sleep. Exercise, we have to keep moving. We have to get outside. We have to connect with the earth. We need to see the sun. How many of us get up and walk outside in the middle of the day? Because our lives have been now constricted to working at home, in an office where you need privacy, we miss the opportunities to see the sun. We miss the opportunities to interact with others, and we miss the opportunity to move. So movement becomes important as we deal with anxiety. Online, there's a lot of little videos, even things that you can do sitting in front of your desk that allows you to move your wrist and move your neck. And because when we are anxious, when we are stressed, when we are overloaded, we begin to feel the effects of this in our body. Our bodies carry that. So who out there can begin to identify with a stiff neck? Who out there having back pains, frequent headaches, and movement is one way that we can begin to deal with some of this anxiety and how it presents itself in our bodies. Now, another way that I want to introduce to you are routines. That's the R, routines. What is your morning routine? If I asked you, when you get up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do? I think I can answer for a lot of people when I say they reach for their phone and they check their emails or their WhatsApp or they check the time. And I want to say, is that a good way to start your day? Is that setting the tone of your day? How can we begin to integrate 6 steps to better mornings? Can we do a dream journal? Can we set an intention? My intention for the day is that I'm going to take regular breaks where I go outside and I get in the sun and I get some of that vitamin D that nurse was talking about, and I allow my body an opportunity to breathe. We can do meditation as I drink my tea or my coffee. I can read something that is inspiring, or I can listen to some music. We know how Miss Stennett's music was calming for us a moment ago. We can have that every single morning at the beginning of our day. Another routine that I want to talk to you about is what I have put up here as savers, silence. Whether that be meditation or some of the breathing, affirmations, encouraging words that you say to yourself as you set out and as you think about what lays ahead in the day. Visualizations, again, exercise. Do you notice how many times exercise presents itself in the presentations? Because we can't stress enough, particularly in a pandemic, in these unprecedented times, how important it is for us to get some exercise and get outside. Reading. Some people like to read their Bible in the morning. Some people might choose to read something inspirational, but spend those quiet moments, whether it be in the afternoon or in the mornings, to nurture yourself and to deal with anxiety by the inclusion of balance, scribing. How many of us write? How many of us make a journal entry about what was my day like? How did I overcome a particular challenge? What went particularly well in my day? What are things that I might need to continue to work on? But I want to stress what went well in my day, because so often we are so concerned about the things that didn't go right that we do not give ourselves the praise for the things that go very well. And again, it contributes to that emotional thinking that I do nothing right. we do things right. There are a lot of times when we interact in ways that are non-conflictual. There are ways that we are pleasant, that we are helpful, that we have gone beyond what is required of us to help someone out at work and to meet that deadline. Those are things that we need to be remembering and making sure that those positive thoughts filter into our brains as we swirl around the negativity that may exist up there. You know, and at the end of it all, our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from us wanting to control it. You know, as with that serenity prayer, it says that there are some things that we just need to leave, whether you leave it to your God, your superior being, however you define that concept of outside of your control, we need to come to terms with that. Because, you know, just when we begin to come to terms with that, it says, just when the caterpillar thought the world was ending, guess what? She became a beautiful butterfly. And I wish that for you all, that as we learn to cope with our anxiety, that we transition to that place in our lives when we become that beautiful, when we take on healthy eating, when we take in happiness, and we really begin to strengthen ourselves and be the beings that we are meant to be. Thank you.
An excellent presentation, Dr. Stuart-Dixon. And I don't know if you were able to look in the chat, but I made some comments because persons were speaking about the relaxation in the voice and how impactful that has been during the session. It, however, didn't detract from the fact that some pertinent facts about anxiety, the maze that you started off with, you know, just setting the background for the sort of thought processes that go on in the anxious mind, really leverage some of the physical things that we may see in a clinical realm. However, you know, as you went through the talk, I did put in that people should still remember to put some questions, not just get totally relaxed, but to think and still be able to participate. So I await those questions, but it was very well received. And for a novice at this sort of thing, it was so easy to follow. And I think that's something that we all appreciate very much. It takes a different level of command to produce and to actually impart all that complexities that you did in a timely manner for our own understanding. You said something that is quite pertinent about anxiety that I personally am going to act on it, and maybe others found it a useful and important point, where we get anxious because we want to control the future. And I think a lot of us with different personalities, type A's and so on, we want to, you know, put things in a particular way. If we deviate from that a little bit, you know, it creates a lot of unrest and certainly a lot of anxiety. But we look forward to talking to you later on, and we thank you so much for sharing this afternoon. Our next presenter hails from the Western region as well. So you see, we're not short of talent around this side at all. Kingston is not Jamaica. My Kingston colleagues don't take any offense, but there's a plethora of competent, rounded, accomplished individuals, and the next speaker stands tall as it relates to those sort of attributes. She's actively involved in mental health, education, and early childhood development. She holds a Master of Science degree in clinical psychology and is currently pursuing her PhD in infant and early childhood development. She has provided services in this region for well over 15 years, and was awarded in 2015 by the Ministry of Education for her unrelenting and untiring service to special education. She's actively involved in community service and sits on a number of boards, including the Ethics Review Board for Kidney Transplants and the bariatric surgery team. She's chairman of the St. James Red Cross and has conducted numerous psychosocial support trainings across the Caribbean on behalf of the International Federation of the Red Cross. Disaster Mental Health Unit. He focuses primarily on the impact of trauma on children and adolescents. She's currently also a lecturer in psychology at our university in the undergraduate level and has presented on numerous topics related to child and adolescent mental health. She's a passionate lady about the promotion of healthy development in children and adolescents. Help me welcome Miss Georgia Rose as she speaks to us this afternoon on the topic, the work-life balance. Very interesting. Welcome, Ms. Rose.
Good afternoon, Dr. Badal. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to pop you up a little bit from Kingston. I'm based in the West, yes. But thank you for that lovely introduction. I want to say good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And I know time is of the essence, so I want to just jump right into the presentation. So I will be speaking to you for a few moments this afternoon about achieving that elusive work-life balance. So very interesting. So this is such a timely presentation, I believe, because now more than ever, we have to have an appreciation and an understanding of the value of having a work-life balance. So the banking giant CEO of Citigroup, Jane Fraser, who took over the role in March 2021, implemented a policy banning all Zoom video work-related calls on the last day of the working week. And Jane believed that this was necessary because she recognized that staff members were becoming very overwhelmed and the constant bombardment of being on these virtual meetings, because the virtual space takes away the clock. We seem to forget that the day actually needs to end. And what the pandemic has done, it has really extended our accessibility to each other, because we're no longer restricted by driving to a meeting or taking an airplane to go to another country or city. We're so accessible all the time that many of us have opened up ourselves to this perpetual workspace. So the CEO of Citigroup implemented this ban that said, no Zoom work meeting on Friday. So with the pursuit of success and happiness, how do we achieve work and life balance when we are often bombarded by the dual demands of both? How do we attend to our occupational commitments and our home commitments or life commitments? It is integral that we strike a practical middle ground so that we achieve the maximum benefits of our gainful pursuits without sacrificing the value of family or self-engagement. So I'm Georgia Rose. I'm a parent, I'm a partner, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a clinician, and many other things. And you can find me acting or operating in all these roles and capacities. I'm no different from many of you who are also on this session with us. Many of us might find ourselves acting in multiple capacities. And for a lot of us, this can be extremely draining. How do we prioritize? When do we say no? Which one comes first? Should I focus on my career, or should I be focusing on myself, or should I be focusing on my family? And it's one of those questions that does not have a simple response, because truth be told, the focus for each person is going to vary depending on the time and space and place that you are within your life during that question or that reflection. So how do we achieve balance in a pandemic, in a time when so many of us work from home and we have kids that are in virtual school? Where do we draw the line? I have my teenage kiddos who come to see me in therapy say to me, I used to love to be in my room, Miss Rose, or I used to love to be on my phone. Now, my room and my phone are no longer places of relaxation or objects of entertainment. I have to work in these spaces. So they have been redefined. Now, this is coming from a teenager. What about us as adults? That many of us, we were told, don't take work home. Let home be home. Let home be the place that we rest and we relax and we have recreation. But many of us have had to take work home or are working from home. So where do we draw that middle ground and say, this is personal time and this is work time? So when we make decisions as it relates to our work-life balance, be mindful of the demands that will follow and ensure that you have the resources to meet these demands. If we divert all our energies to work and neglect our family, we might lose special moments that we can never regain. If we commit all our energy to our family, then we might miss opportunities for advancements within our careers. So while balance might not be easily obtained, it is definitely not impossible. So I invite you to join me over the next few minutes as we discuss some tips on achieving work-life balance. So one, identify what you desire your work-life balance to look like. What do you want? Take the time to evaluate your needs, your demands, and your pursuits. Be mindful that the imagery of what is balance for you will change throughout your lifetime. Work-life balance in your 20s is not work-life balance in your 30s, and it definitely will not be work-life balance in your 50s. We have to know ourselves before we try to implement any remedies for the challenges and concerns that we might have. And most importantly, we have to be honest with ourselves. What do you want to accomplish? What is important for you? Oftentimes we're making decisions based on what society says our balance should look like, or based on what others around us are doing. And that is not necessarily always the most realistic approach for your scenario. The work-life balance for a working mother with small children will most definitely be different than that of a working mother with grown children. Balance at the start of your career will definitely be different than balance 10 years later. Having an understanding of what you desire sets the tone for achieving the balance that is right for you. 2, set your priorities based on your desires for balance. Be aware that it is okay to shift these priorities as you move along in life. Most importantly, remind yourself that no one but you is allowed to set these priorities. Nobody can tell you what should be important to you right now. Nobody can make that decision on your behalf. And no one should have the authority to make you feel guilty about what you have decided that you want your work-life balance to be. What is important to you at this stage of your life may most definitely not be important to other persons, such as our colleagues or our family members. But ultimately, you will be the one that will have to live the life that you choose to create. So it must be your choice. Many years ago, I met a person, a gentleman, who was now, at the point of retirement. And he ended up having to come in for therapy, and he was struggling with a lot of anxiety. And a big part of his anxiety rested on the fact that he spent his entire life building his career. No, he was in a field that demanded that he retire. There were no opportunities to continue working within his field. It was one of those areas. But he had not invested in his family. And he felt very discombobulated. He felt very alone. He did not understand how he was going to find meaning in his daily life without his work. And he had no alternatives to make that meaning because he had not invested in cultivating that social space. And social space doesn't always have to be having a partner or having children. Also know that social space is about cultivating healthy relationships that are going to be there as your support system as you move through life. He was not involved in any social groups. He was not involved in any outreach projects or clubs or societies. He had lived his entire life for his job, very committed, did an amazing job, but he had only focused on one aspect of himself. There was no balance. And here he was, well over into his 60s, at this age of retirement, and he couldn't go back and erase time. He was now left to face and cope with the decisions that he had made. I use this scenario to illustrate to you the importance of being practical in the decisions that we make. When we sit down to decide what we hope our life to be like, we have to appreciate that there are many different facets to our life. So we are more than our careers. We are more than our partners. We're more than our friends. We're more than our religion. And we're more than our family. How do we attend to all the parts of us and invest in ourselves in such a way that when we are at each juncture in life, we are able to function in an adaptive manner? So we must have family time, and we most definitely must have work time. So 3, set firm work-life boundaries. Our boundaries must be consistent with our roles in our jobs. Some of us might have the luxury of turning our work phones off after hours and not attending to emails on the weekends. Some of us may not. We may also choose to not accept weekend overtime shifts or set aside specific days for our loved ones. I try my hardest not to do any sort of work on the weekends because that time really belongs to my family, especially my young children. And what that means is sometimes when persons make requests or demands, I have to say no. It doesn't mean that I'm unkind, and it doesn't mean that I don't feel led to participate in what they're offering. But I have to recognize that my family is as much a priority as my occupational calling. It can be a simple act of being present for dinner on specific days. So I say to my clients, maybe have a routine that on Mondays, the family always sits down for dinner. Or on Fridays, the family always plays games. Or on Saturdays, the families go for a walk. Make these practical, simple decisions that are more likely to have a meaningful impact, because people come to appreciate that, guess what? Georgia will not be available on a Saturday because that will be her family time. So as time passes, people become less likely to make those requests, and they respect the boundaries that you have put in place. In doing so, we demonstrate to our loved ones their value to us. We say to them, you are important. So just as how I make time for these meetings and I have these deadlines, I also make time for my family and those that I care about. Share the responsibility with your team members. Oftentimes we have difficulties finding work-life balance because we're not great team players. We don't want to share the responsibility, and we don't expect others to share the responsibility with us. We have to strengthen the teams within which we work so that if we have to step away, the team is still able to function. So if you are part of an effective team, it means that you don't have to participate in everything. You don't have to be present for every meeting. You don't have to attend every event. So you are able to say no in a very comfortable space. And it also means that when you are present, your coworkers also have opportunities to say no and be present with their family or their private engagements. Check in with the important people. Follow up with your work superiors and team members and ask them, how have I been doing in the job? Do you feel like I'm present? Do you feel like I'm delivering? Follow up with your family. Ask them, how have I been doing? Have I been present with you? And be willing to address the concerns that they share. Where comfortable and practical, discuss your balance needs and discuss your challenges. Say to your family, I really want to get this promotion. There's some goals that I've set at work and I might need to work some overtime. Can you bear with me for the next 2 months? Say to the people that you work with, I've just had a young baby and I want to be more present with my child. How can I shift my hours so that I'm not leaving when my child is sleeping and returning home when they're sleeping? Please know that there are always opportunities for compromise. Identify resources. It is difficult to achieve balance alone, so be willing to seek and accept support. We can't do it alone. We all thrive when we are a part of a larger group that provides practical support. And be reminded that we all have to create our own personal roadmap. My roadmap will not be the same as yours. So we talk about education, career, family, personal exploration, exploration of passions, and moving along to retirement. The road that we travel must be one that we select. And if you think you don't have that authority or that power to determine how your road moves, you actually do. And sometimes you only have to make simple choices. Strive for balance. So make time for fun, build your career, encourage your own spiritual growth, plan your finances out well, because solid finances support a lot of the other decisions that you want to make. Make time for family, and most definitely make time for self. Because if we don't take care of ourselves and make ourselves a priority, we won't be able to have balance in anything else that we're doing. Balance will not be created through magic, nor will it appear out of thin air. Balance has to be created by you. I want to thank you for listening to me. And I always like to remind everyone that there is no good health without good mental health. Thank you so very much. Dr. Badab.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Rose, for that beautiful presentation. Quite practical, insightful, and obviously quite researched in terms of what is practical at this time. You made some pertinent points, in my view, looking at the virtual space that has been spun on us in the last year, where we're accessible all the time, and the need to set limits. That's very powerful and very, very, very important as we protect this balance, which is very necessary for our own personal, professional growth. And I dare say at the end, we have to spend time for our financial health and growth, because that is also important, as you said, as it relates to us making the right decisions later on. It's also very important that, well, I paid attention, and I hope most of our participants would have, as it relates to the fact that balancing is not the same for everyone. And it is so dynamic, it's fluid, and it's very, very important that we don't compare and feel that we're not achieving or we're not balancing well, but we have to look at our own dynamics and make that work for us in the best way possible. But I thank you very much. That was well received, and you shared so eloquently with us here this afternoon. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is an academic. He's part of the academic staff here, UWI, Western Campus. He's a cybersecurity enthusiast, which makes it very prudent to hear from someone of this caliber at this time. He's participated yearly in cybersecurity awareness campaigns, with one of his primary objectives being to help users better protected in the digital space. We all can relate to this need. He's currently a PhD candidate in computer science at UWI. Help me welcome Mr. Anthony Drummond as he speaks to us on cyber safety and security. Help me welcome him. Mr. Drummonds, welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Badal.
Sure.
And good afternoon, everyone, colleagues, friends, everyone. And I must say, I have been enjoying the presentations thus far, and I'm going to try my best to keep the momentum going. So we're going to be looking at safety and security in the digital space, and simply because, well, ever since the inception of COVID-19, ever since we've been restricted to certain spaces, or more or less limited, I should be saying, we have become exceedingly more reliant on technology services, specifically internet services, right? So we're going to be looking at pretty much stuff that you, the users, are doing within the digital space that you're not supposed to be doing. You don't realize that you're doing it, but you're doing it. All right, so let's jump right into it. All right, so I want you to take a look at this graph because I have mentioned that, since the inception of COVID-19, we have, in terms of internet usage or devices connected to the internet, that has increased exponentially. But this graph that I have right here, it speaks up to the, use or active users on social media, right? And you have, if you really look close enough, you'll realize there has been some amount of increase from 2019 and 2020. What you're seeing for 2021 here up to 2025, those are projected numbers. So chances are they'll be higher because, as I said, we have become extremely reliant on technology, especially internet, right? But with that, and it's something that has been happening over the years, and this is why we actually have our cyber awareness campaigns every year, is that, we keep on seeing an increase in what you call scamming, or you could just say phishing, or the correct terminology to use is social engineering, because what you really do is you use techniques, you use various methods to trick users into giving you certain information, sometimes very sensitive information. That's essentially what you do in scamming, right? And there has been an increase, it's happening now, and it's a mess, right? Now, in terms of these things that are happening, where we talk about scamming and so forth, all of these cybersecurity breaches on a whole, they're usually caused because of human error. Simple unintentional actions that are done, right? So it's usually on the user side. As I have here, 90% of those recorded breaches are actually based on human error. All right. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to look at 4 general points, right? 4 general points speaking about, where users normally go wrong. And once I go through this, you should be much more aware and you should be able to protect yourself better within the digital space. All right, so let's go. So the first point that we're going to look at is the misuse of applications. And I'm not talking about, let's say you open Microsoft Excel and you insert an incorrect formula and you get an error, or you get nonsense results. I'm not talking about that, right? Nor am I talking about the use of software to do malicious things. No, if you do something like that, then you're just a bad person, right? But we're not talking about that, but we'll get to it in a bit, right? The second point is privacy at home. A lot of us, we're working from home now. Sensitive information is exposed to persons who are at home with you, right? And I have privacy at home or otherwise, meaning, what about privacy at work? What about privacy within the public space? So I'm talking about you being on your mobile phone while standing at a line to go to Western Union, or I mean, if you're in Jamaica's favorite restaurant, which is KFC, you have sensitive, you're on some kind of app, you have sensitive information being exposed, you don't know who's looking at your phone, stuff like that, right? The third point now is your social media activity. And I've seen this from time to time. I'm on pretty much a lot of these social media platforms, and I will go through the comments, and I'm telling you, these persons, they're very harsh with how they say things, and the things they post at times, they really post sensitive stuff that they're not supposed to be posting, and chances are you're doing the same thing, right? And then the final point is what I would call the classic phishing problem. And I say classic because phishing was actually introduced in 1995. That's a long time ago, right? But for some reason, even though users are made aware, so in companies, they should, and well, they usually have those type of awareness, it still catch users off guard. Why is that? Right? So we're just going to look at all of these so that you guys can understand a bit more about what's happening in the digital space, right? So our first point, as I said, misuse of applications, right? This is the first thing that you as users are not doing, and it's setting strong passwords. The idea for strong password is that you have uppercase letters, you have lowercase letters, you have special characters, you have numbers, and then you should ensure that that password somehow does not lead back to you. It's not saying anything about you. But the thing is, how many of us are really doing that, right? It was just 2 weeks ago, someone asked me to look at their laptop, and the password to their laptop was actually their first name. That's a very poor password, right? So you have to set strong passwords. The second thing here now is failure to recognize illegitimate websites. And I'm going to expound a bit more on this when we get to the final point, which is, when we're talking about phishing, right? But normally this happens when, let's say someone, you see a word email in your inbox, you click on the link just to see what's happening. It takes you to some kind of website, some malicious website. Basically, we call that a phishing website. So you click on the link, you go to this website, you don't know what it's about. In your eyes, it looks good, but there's so many things wrong on this website, right? And you end up giving away your information, right? So that's one of it. You fail to recognize illegitimate websites, right? Not updating software. From time to time, you will get updates or notifications of updates on your computer. We don't like updates, especially if we get a Windows update, right? We don't like to do those things, right? And so we keep on putting off these updates, and we complain that, all right, when I do a Windows update, after the update, my laptop gets slow. Well, that may be true, but the thing is, normally updates, when you get software updates, it means that there's some kind of security flaw, and they're sending out a security patch to help you protect yourself. And the thing is, if you keep delaying that update, chances are, your entire device might become compromised, right? So you don't want that. And then installing malicious applications. This happens with a lot of mobile users, right? It happens with what you call app permissions. And let me tell you exactly how app permissions work, right? So when you're installing an app, let's say you go to the Google Play Store and you're installing an app, it will ask you for a set of permissions. So it might say it wants access to your contacts, it will need access to, so many other things. You genuinely don't read what it wants access to. You just click, okay. Giving, whoever the app could be, there could be some malicious software in the app itself, and you just gave someone on the outside access to your device, right? There's another case where the permission is actually not shown, right? And that one, I mean, you can't blame the users for that, which is why I think about 2 years ago, what Google actually did, I think 3 years ago, I think, what Google actually did was they went through their entire Play Store, they scanned all of the apps to see, which ones were actually hiding permissions, and they deleted them. But there's actually more, right? So just be careful, right? go through the permissions whenever you're installing applications, right? And then you also have what we call untrusted applications, meaning that you have persons who would, let's say the Android users, they would download what we call an APK, right? That's the Android software that you can actually install on the phone. That those applications are not on the Google Play Store, which means that Google does not trust those. They're untrusted, right? And you're not supposed to be installing those applications on your phone, but users still do it, right? Not knowing the dangers that lie within those applications, right? So you don't want to be doing any of these things. All right, good. So again, misuse of applications. This is exactly what users are doing. They keep on doing it. You tell them over and over not to do these things, but they're still doing it. And I want you guys to become aware of all of this. All right. The second point, privacy at home or otherwise. And I'm just going to ask, pretty much 3 questions here. You can actually think about it, right? Who has access to what at your home, right? In other words, if you have a laptop where you do all of your work, on it, does your children have access to it? Do you, if someone on the outside enters a home, would they have access to it? Because if they do, then immediately, they can view whatever confidential information you have there, and that's actually a breach of security if that information is for your company. Right? You have to be careful with who has access to what. Yeah. And one other thing you have to look at is, what kind of access or access to the internet what kind of access to the internet does your children have? Because you see, the thing is, and I've seen this with my niece, it's that she has a tablet, right? She has a tablet, and I mean, of course, she's very young, so she's not at the stage where she's able to read or identify words and stuff like that. But the icons, she knows exactly what all of those icons do without anyone telling her, right? She's able to go online, she's able to find what she wants, she's able to download and install those things. And here's what can happen, right? You don't know what that child might download onto the tablet. Once they do that, if it's something that's malicious, immediately that malicious software has access to pretty much every other device on your home network, and you don't want that. So probably what you need to do is set some kind of access control or parental control rather on those devices, right? And then, is everyone aware and protected? I just mentioned that if someone downloads something malicious on their device on your home network, everyone becomes a victim right there. So you have to ensure that everyone is aware of what's going on, and you have to ensure that everyone is protected as well, right? And again, are you exposing sensitive information, right? If you're working, I mean, don't just get up and, go anywhere. You might forget something in the kitchen. Don't do that. The best thing to do, just put a lock screen on your laptop, right? Close it. And also ensure that you're the only person who knows the password, especially if it's a work computer. All right, so guys, remember this. Who has access to what at home? Is everyone aware and protected? Are you exposing sensitive information? All right, that's our second point. Moving on to the third one. Very interesting one. Social media activity. What are you doing on social media? A lot of persons are mass sharing pretty much everything that's happening in their lives. Why? Right? Even this semester I've seen where even students, you will have the chat let's say if you're using Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate, the students will take a screenshot of the chat of stuff that's happening, and they'll post it all over the place. I've seen it on Twitter. And you know, the comments that they make, I mean, they're pretty much disrespecting their lecturers. And I don't think that's fair, right? We should not be doing stuff like this. So we need to understand that, you know, everything is not supposed to be shared within the digital space. Yeah, making inappropriate comments. So harsh comments, right? If you go on, let's say Facebook, and you know, maybe there's the Gleaner post made a post about some kind of accident, or it might be something, you know, rape is a big thing in the country that we're trying to get rid of. Just the comments there, I'm telling you, I'm not sure why we're this harsh towards one another, instead of just trying to understand what's really, you know, really happening and how to fix the problem, right? Making inappropriate comments, you need to ensure that you don't do that, right? They have what they call the code of acceptable internet behavior, right? So it's basically how you're supposed to behave while you're within the space, right? A quick Google search will give you all the information you need on that. I won't be able to cover everything here for you, all right? So another thing about inappropriate comments is, all right, so the comment may not be inappropriate, but let's say you make a comment on something someone has said, the person might not like it, and then, you know, there's this back and forth conversation. It may reach a point where that person might click on, you know, they may go, I mean, they can go to your profile, and guess what? They can view information about you. They can find where you are. No, I'm not saying that anyone right here should be doing stuff like this, you know, right? You're not supposed to. I'm just telling you stuff that it's happening and you have to be careful, right? So they go there, they see the information about you, they know your location, they know where you work, and, you know, they can harm you that way. You don't want that to happen to you, right? Even if you don't have that information up, pictures that you take and post, if they're able to view those pictures, if they're able to download it, they can view information embedded in that picture, and we call that metadata. And it actually, you can actually get the location where that picture was taken. So if you take a picture of your garden, right, and right, immediately the latitude and longitudinal information is actually stored in that, and persons can track you. So you have to be careful what you're doing, right? Let me show you an example. I took this screenshot of the settings option in my camera app. Once you have this GPS tag in the app checked, whatever picture you take, the location will be stored within the picture. So when you post it, you're just telling everybody where you live. So if persons are clever enough, they can extract that information and they can track you. Again, be very careful. All right. And then of course, you also have what we call bots in the social media comments. All right. You probably see them from time to time. You might see something random, somebody maybe advertising, you know, some kind of ad, and it may look attractive, but those are usually bots. And when you click on it, yeah, that's just, you know, you giving persons or the malware, some kind of malware, access to your device. So you have to be careful, right? And check these things, right? So that's actually the third point, right? We're getting to the final point now, which is my favorite. And that's where I'll talk about the classic phishing problem. And I have one diagram here so that you can understand what's going on, all right? And it's very easy to follow. You see the numbers, those are the different steps, starting from 1 to 4. So you have your attacker, and this is what they do. They send you an email. All right, it looks legitimate. Let's say you have a favorite financial institution. They send you something about, you know, some amazing um, promotion going on. It could be something about a credit card. They could be telling you that, you know, um, um, right, it could be about credit card or anything, right? They send you that email, then you go ahead and you click on that link in your email because you want to see more information. What happens is that that link is going to take you to what we call a phishing website. The phishing website looks, if not exactly, it looks almost like the actual thing. And if you don't pay attention to it, you will end up giving the attacker your information. For example, when you're signing in, that information is going directly to the attacker. Then all they will have to do is log in to the legitimate website and transfer your money. Simple. Transfer, withdraw, however you want it, right? It's a very scary thing and you have to pay attention. It has been happening, especially here in Jamaica. You have to be very, very careful, all right? Again, I'm not trying to scare anyone, no. I'm just making you aware of what's really happening, all right? So the graph that I have here, I believe it was at the last UWI Research Day that when WJC went, when we had our Zozo and stuff like that. What we had was we had a phishing workshop. So essentially, it's just a quiz. You look at 14 screenshots of 14 different screenshots. So it's 14 different websites, and you're supposed to tell which one is. You're supposed to select if it's legitimate or illegitimate. So we would give them a talk before and tell them of the different elements to look out for, and then, you know, they would proceed to doing the quiz. So the research days, it lasted for three days. And over that period, we had about, it was 300, and I remember the exact number, it was 300 plus participants that we had. And we actually were able to get the results from all of them. So the graph that we have here, it might look a bit weird, but for example, where you see 14 underscore COR, that means 14 correct, meaning you had 60 plus persons out of the 300 plus who would have scored full marks. That's good. That's really good. But then when you look down here, you will see that majority of the persons, I mean, for me, if you're not getting 14, you're not doing well. In other words, you don't understand what you're looking for, and chances are, because you don't understand, it's easy for you to become a victim of phishing, right? And this is what, I mean, the persons range from, you know, university students and, you know, just people within the surrounding communities, right? And a lot did not understand the serious issue of phishing, right? So guys, when you see these social media, these cybersecurity campaigns happening, especially on November 30th, that's the cybersecurity, you know, International Cybersecurity Day. Pay attention to these things because they're very important, and chances are you have already become a victim and you just don't know it. All right, and that's our fourth point. All right, I'm going to leave you with two important tips here, just two. Right, you need to be cyber aware, right? In order for this to happen, or in order for, let's say if I wanted to ensure that you were at that stage where you can become cyber aware, I would have to go through many workshops with you. It's not something easy to get over. However, it's not something difficult to understand and avoid either, right? Most times we turn a blind eye to these things. And then be careful what you do on open networks. Open networks meaning if let's say Cafe Blue has internet and it's open, you don't need a password to get on, or if everybody knows the password, that's not good. But that's an open network, right? Any malicious user can get on that network and they can, in fact, pretty much view what you're doing, right? So be careful what you're doing when you connect to open networks, all right? And that's pretty much it for me, ladies and gentlemen. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drummonds. For some of us, very eye-opening presentation, I'm sure. And, you set the stage that maybe is creating a little bit of anxiety because we probably are not conversant with much of the information that you just shared. I'm sure it's a very complex area, but you made it seem rather simple. And the steps you gave us to guide ourselves and to become better at protecting ourselves online were well received. The word phishing, for example, is new to me. I don't know how many other persons, but and how you showed that the interplay between on your phishing algorithm is rather scary. I found the tagging, the GPS tagging, rather interesting as well. And as we navigate the space, we have to take into consideration much of what you've said clearly to help us navigate safely. And certainly as it relates to children, and in this kind of environment that we are operating, it's important as parents that we understand so we can impart and hopefully make ourselves all better in the cyberspace. So we thank you very much for sharing so succinctly and in a very practical way how we can protect ourselves and become better at cybersecurity. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I'm sure that we hopefully, we all had some insights and some beneficial information that can help us to remain well in this challenging era. At this point, I'm going to hand over the remaining of this online seminar to Miss Carla Edwards. She will then do a vote of thanks, and this is the last from me. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Badal. Ladies and gentlemen, mine is the task of moving the vote of thanks. First, I would like to thank all the persons who registered and have joined us today. I know some have left. I know you would have benefited from all the presentations on how to find your balance. And as Dr. Prendergast said, dancing through the rain as we celebrate this World Day of Safety and Health at Work 2021. Thank you to our campus director, Dr. Patrick Prendergast, for your words of greeting to the seminar and highlighting the important work that the UWI Mona WJC is doing in the Western region in helping to facilitate conversation around navigating our life stories and managing our health and safety. We also thank our presenters, Dr. Jennifer Stuart-Dixon, who gave us tips on how to recognize and cope with anxiety during these unprecedented times. Mrs. Georgia Rose, who spoke to the importance of achieving the elusive work-life balance and its benefits. And finally, Mr. Anthony Drummonds, who increased our awareness on safety and security in the digital space. Special thanks to our moderator, Dr. Garfield Badal, who graciously gave of his time to guide the discussion on how to find that balance to manage our life stories, health, and safety. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your guidance through this. Okay, finally, to the team behind the scenes, Miss Crystal Stennett, who conceptualized this event from the onset of getting the engagement of our esteemed presenters, to Mr. Pete Campbell, our CRIT intern, who always gives support to online events, Mr. Andre Hewitt, our WJC MITS team, of one for his focused expertise on managing the platform and the technical aspects in terms of creating flyers and editing for the YouTube and for the Facebook platform. Thank you also to Mr. Ishmael Preston from the Mona Mits team for supporting his efforts. We also wish to thank the wider UWI Mona and UWI Mona WJC community for their continued support of our CRIT events. So once again, thank you all for joining, and stay safe and protect your sanity. I thank you. Have a great evening.
Hope remains our guiding light. Resilience our battle cry. Stronger is the mission of our audacity. Bolder the promise and the light. Larger are the pillars we have become. Expanding confidence for the turn. Together we rise. Brighter and better. Together we overcome.